Hi, I'm Laura Staley. I'm founder of Cherish Your World. I'm author of Live Inspired, Let Go Courageously, and Cherish Your World gift book of 100 tips. I passionately guide people to a holistic transformation of their physical spaces, limiting beliefs, heart, soul, mind, body. Catch me this week on the Jessie T Show. I'm so honored to be here.
Laura Staley, welcome to the Jessie T Show.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show, Jesse.
It's my pleasure. I'm so thankful we connected, and it just seems like people that are in some sort of alignment on a soul level, on a life level, always find a way to bump into each other. And so when we started connecting and talking about our journeys, we really knew that this was going to be a great conversation. So share with the world a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Oh, I'd be happy to. Wow, who I am was maybe okay. That radiant beam of what? No. So I'm founder of Cherish Your World. I'm an author of 3 books, actually a fourth one in the queue called Abundant Heart. Excited to be sharing about that in the future. I'm also a certified Feng Shui consultant. I founded Cherish Your World out of that just about not quite 20 years ago, but I began practicing more than 20 years ago, the principles and practices of Feng Shui, and just love it. Found my voice, found a passion for a lifetime, but more importantly, that inner work to do the self-discovery, because you can move things around in your physical space all you want, or you might re-engage the pattern of collecting clutter and go, wait, what am I doing? So with that deep wisdom, you just make better choices. So I get very passionate lately about guiding people to their own inner voice, their own inner wisdom, to shed those limiting beliefs, to process through what might gotten stuck and unresolved in their own hearts as I walk that walk, right? I'm a teacher, I'm a student, I'm a guide, and I'm a lifelong learner, all of those things. So, and I've walked a very rocky road to get to this juncture and this conversation with you. And it's with utter gratitude that I share and be in this conversation with you today.
It's a beautiful journey, and we all want to hear it. So share with us a little bit about the journey, and then also after we get through the journey piece of it, let's talk about Feng Shui. So I want to hear in detail about the experience of that, but talk a little bit about your journey and some of the things that you've overcome to get to today.
Oh, absolutely. So I was a child, middle daughter of middle class home. My father was a professor. Both my parents have passed, by the way. My mother was a teacher, substitute teacher, mother. And she had, there were challenges. There were dynamics in that household that were really difficult. The best way I could describe it is kind of an I hate you, don't leave me, scapegoat, very much the chosen. And it wasn't an alcoholic household, but one filled with chaos and emotional trauma. Yes. And I often it was terrifying and traumatizing, honestly. And then outside the home, I also had adults behave badly. So there was molestation when I was 3, 9, and then a rape that I lost my virginity at 19. Wow. So that's in the mix, as well as kind of little big things in that cauldron of trying to figure out what it meant to be human and what it meant to be loved and what it meant to feel safe in my own container, what it meant to feel deeply valuable. Because one of the things that I heard constantly was I was a worthless piece of bad word. And that became the inner bully, if you will. I mean, a lot of those words that are said to children and that were said to me as a child became my internal, what some people call an inner critic or inner bully. So overcoming those deep beliefs that I just shouldn't exist, right? I felt like I had to earn my right to exist. Now I happen to choose the pathway of, oh my gosh, I must become the kindest, most perfect little girl ever, right? So I had at it, right? Straight A's in school. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the trophies I earned in swimming, and nothing, like wow. And then I went on to earn a PhD in political science from the Ohio State University, which I'm deeply proud of. So BA, MA, graduated summa cum laude from Ohio Wesleyan University, which again I'm extremely proud of. But here's the thing: none of that had me somehow meet the mark. I was still called, and it just it was like wow. And when I was joyful, nobody can be that happy. And when I was sad, well, it must be your fault. I mean, it was just like, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so inside of that, and the efforts to perfect myself, um, you could look at my resume, Jesse, and go, wow, what an accomplished woman. And she was a full-time mother, and now she worked as a college professor at Ohio. She returned to Ohio Wesleyan and gave back and got to teach there. Oh, what and yet inside, right, in my internal world, in my emotional world, and in my mind, I had all of these traumas, including a hospitalization that happened at 14 years old after I had been in church camp, witnessed the rape of my tent mate, told the truth, but then was told, you can't tell your parents because this never happened. And even if it did, don't you know that your counselor would be fired and they'd blame you? You would be at fault. You would be blamed for the firing of the counselor, and just, like the whole 9 yards. It's still a tiny bit of a mystery, but I do believe that I got, that drugs happened, and that set off me in a disconnect and a spiritual waking from my own body and soul. I mean, I was here, but not here. Yep. And, I was flooded by positivity at that time. But I also was, I left the house at one point. A family picked me up and got me back to my parents. I was speaking to them in Spanish. I mean, this is what I think internally was happening. But I think they finally had me write down the name and address of where I lived so they could get me safely back to my parents' home. And at that juncture, with, I'm sure, deep, conversations with other people, they had me placed. And when I was there, and I still don't know why, I got taken to solitary confinement for an entire month of my 14-year-old life. And there I was asked the question by an angry nurse who walked in every time that she walked in. And my glasses, I had glasses at the time because I had poor vision. I had myopia. And I don't remember the numbers I had, but it wasn't 20/20. So without my glasses, people were just blurry blobs. And her energy was very angry. And she would walk in and ask me, do you know why you're here? Of course, I'm like, kind of like, no. But it became an existential question that I still ask myself to this day of why am I here on the planet? So inside that cauldron of all those experiences, all those life experiences, I have managed to find my heart. And of course, with lots of work with professionals and healers and gifted body workers, because, like I could intellectually tell you that, oh my gosh, I'm kind of this psycho B from H, with my kids, because now I'm getting triggered by these small little ones and I'm behaving so badly and I'm having these, hot mess meltdowns. I'm not calling them names, but I'm using really bad words, right? Because the next morning, my son would be playing with his Matchbox cars going F, F, F. And I'm like, wow, okay. If I don't want him impacted by my implodes, if you will, I have deeper work to do. So I was able to call it out intellectually, but I knew I needed to drop in my body to do the deeper work. Yeah. So just, wow, the experience of self-discovery, self-awareness, not wanting to live terrified and traumatized. I just didn't want to live terrified and traumatized for one more moment. So well, and I wanted an understanding of, I really wanted a deep understanding of what had happened to me when I was 14 too, because nobody, as you can imagine, I'm released, but I go back into that cauldron, right? And and nobody talked about it. Nobody wanted, and I'm like, we all need therapy, and I'm like just yelling at my parents and like, we all need it. And it was like, we're not doing that. It's you. You're the one that was in the bin, And I'm like, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. So I took it on myself to get on that path of self-discovery, of spiritual awakening, of wanting to know, why is it I'm here? And with all these like, what? Woo, adults, right? Behaving so badly. And then I became a badly behaved adult, hurt people, right? And it was like, okay, got it. Time to pattern interrupt all of these and decompress and dismantle and unlearn. I love that phrase, unlearn all these learnings and shred the limiting beliefs. Let go of that inner critic and fill my whole being, heart, mind, body, and soul with love. Because at the end of the day, I discovered that I came here to love and be loved in return. That, like bottom line, if I were to bottom line the essence of my life, it's that. It's to love, be compassionate with myself, to take on this and kind of detach from what has just not ever been mine, whether it was my mother or the perpetrators or those all, predators, all that, right? Like, okay, I know they said it's your fault, but no, right? And how long it takes a child to kind of disentangle that. Because as kids, we like, oh, that must be the truth. And so, shedding the untruths and taking it on, and then landing in what is it that I'm here for? What is it that I love? So I share my humanity so honestly and vulnerably with people, because what I've discovered is when I do that, people don't feel so all alone. Like they could look at my resume and go, dang, she's got it all together. But it's like, no, there have been periods of serious hot mess. And then of course, life keeps going and the cauldron keeps stirring, the pot keeps stirring, a little bit of stability in there. But, 6 years ago, another implode. My 22-year marriage ended, and then my teen son ran into really difficult times. My daughter went off to college, and it all just kind of converged on that same day, and of course, I saw all the cues leading up to, wow, okay, I really must piece out of this latest learning experience. And it's all been this deep inner work to make peace with all these pieces and parts of myself. Honestly, anybody who's shown up, I'm like, you're just a mirror of what's going on inside of me. And I can have compassion and love for you from a distance, but I got to go to work right here and right here. And, with all of me, and make those really healthy, good choices, not to perfect myself, but to become human and humane with myself, and to know that I am here for a reason. And I may be still figuring that out as long as I live. We'll see.
I mean, I think part of one of your major reasons is just being who you are and sharing this exact story of courageous vulnerability with the world. And number one, thank you for being you. Thank you for all that you've endured, and thank you for the grace in which you carry this journey with you, because we are all sent here our souls have decided to be here for specific reasons, and both you and I have, our souls have decided to face some crazy shit.
That's a really good way of saying it.
Healed, to become healers, to become teachers, to be students, to be empathetic to people that have been through traumatic situations. I mean, we for some reason, our souls decided to be in the now, in the bodies they are now, and experience things we've experienced, experience forgiveness and trust and love and all these different things. And so, number one, thank you for that. And there's a lot that you just said there that I want to unpack, and I want to talk about the most recent part that resonated with me before we go back. So when you said, one of the best things that you can do or believe that you could do is to be and receive love. And it's so funny because I did a plant medicine ceremony a little over a year ago. My first intention, I had 3 of them. My first intention was to be and receive love in the world. And because I had a lot of trauma like yourself in different avenues, right? But a lot of trauma in my life, I hadn't loved myself in a very long time. And this plant medicine journey kicked my ass. It was the hardest plant medicine journey I had to this date. I've worked with different protocols, different plant medicines at different times and everything. And so I've kind of seen a spectrum of experience. But this one beat me up. And it was because all the trauma that I hadn't dealt with for decades, all the things I just buried down, that I didn't pay attention to, that I didn't even voice an emotion, name an emotion, all came flooding back. And they say that doing plant medicine is like swallowing a therapist and doing 5 years of therapy in one sitting. I shit you not. It was like 20 years of therapy in one sitting. And I went through this. Yeah, it's crazy. It's funny, but it's hard. And so I went through this period of mourning pain and loss that I had experienced, and this intense sense of loneliness and abandonment, all these different things I felt. And for a couple hours, I was just sitting on my couch looking out the window as the world to me looked like it was on, not fire in a bad way, but it was just, the colors were so amazing. I couldn't even describe it. As like breathing and wavy and different hues of like pinks and oranges and greens, and just the world looked like it was on fire in the most beautiful way. I had this deep sorrow because a part of me was cathartically healing. And so for 2 weeks after that experience, I was in, I wouldn't even, maybe a depression, but I was in a deep, dark place where I had opened up and what I did honestly was I reopened my empathetic side, because for a long time I had shut it off because I was being hurt so much in my life. I didn't want to be hurt anymore. So I put up a wall, and I opened that all back up to all those feelings. And so for 2 weeks, I was processing everything that I had endured, but feeling it. So every day it was just sad and crying, and I'd be watching like a Disney Plus movie with one of my kids, and like something that's funny and cute like Moana would make me cry. And I'm like, one of the other intentions I set was to be a better dad. And I felt like I was a really good dad, but you can always learn, and you can become softer and become more supportive and more empathetic, and you can evolve. Right. And so one of my things was to show them how to be emotional men. You can be a strong warrior type man, but you can also have a heart and be empathetic. And so I was picking them up every time I would cry, like, daddy's crying because ... And as a man, it's okay to cry and show emotion. You have to be able to release these things. And so this beautiful catharsis happened. And 2 weeks later from that moment, it just, something changed, and it went from this sadness to this beautiful joy for life. And so then now, 2 weeks after that journey of years of therapy in one moment, I was able to love myself so that I could be and receive love in the world.
Oh, fabulous. Fabulous. Oh, I love so much what you shared there. Yeah, because I think the 3 core things that people face are, some version of this, right? Rejection, abandonment, and betrayal.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, well, there's more, there's violence to the body and, some of the things that happened to me, but wow, to come through and how important that you focused on feeling the feelings. Cause gosh, there isn't a whole lot of, well, at least in my experience, there wasn't a whole lot of permission given, even though my dad cried openly, really grateful for that. I never experienced my mother crying in my childhood. I had a brief, I took a 10-year, decade-long hiatus, ghosting would be my word for it, of my entire family of origin, which saved my life, my soul, my mental, emotional health, probably my physical health. But I did have a short period of détente, and it was the first time I ever experienced my mother crying. It has just completely shocked me.
Wow.
And, clearly she was processing through some things in relationship to me. It was tough because it's so hard to trust somebody who has been so demonstrated such untrustworthiness.
Yes.
And yet I did hear myself say, I forgive you and I love you, which was my deeper truth, because she did apologize. And yet she flipped right back to her old ways. And then I finally, did the final piece out. But feeling the feelings, as you were sharing, and to integrate, right, all these aspects of being human. I think that's so important, Jesse. I mean, for me as a woman to cry and laugh openly, people are like, "Yeah, she is a girl," and yet I'm like, wait a minute, these are human.
Yes.
These are human expressions.
Yes.
They're not just in the container called female. They're to be shared and experienced by all human beings, no matter how somebody identifies or what they have come through or from or whatever, and having that permission to know that it's okay to feel those feelings, because on the other side of the grief, and there is so much loss to grieve, a lost childhood, because when you go out in the world and you start hearing about other people like, oh, childhood is carefree and it's fun and it's magical and playful, and then stuff happens in your adulthood and you're like, yeah, okay, you're not talking to me. Right. But then you realize, wow, that's kind of a thing. And then you just shroud yourself, and on Mother's Day you can hardly be on Facebook, right? Because you're just like, oh God, no one wants to hear the truth of my experience. But to go ahead and I don't know where I was going with that, but to connect the dots, right? And to feel, have that emotional expression, make those choices about the thoughts, become that witness consciousness. Because that's what I hear in a way that you did. You looked back at the darkness and were able to feel it and just witness it, not re-experience it, but maybe feel some of the feelings
Yes.
of the grief and loss that you had put in a container.
Yep.
Because here's the thing that I've noticed on the other side of loving and being loved is when you open your heart. I'll speak from my perspective. When I've opened my heart and kept it wide open, wow, that much more love can come flowing out. But I also notice that I'm not deflecting ways that people are loving me.
Yes.
And what a gift it is for somebody who's expressing love towards me, for me to actually receive it.
Yes.
And then the other piece of it, Jesse, is when I am using all my 10 languages of love, right? Well, okay, 5, but 10. Yep. that when another person actually receives that particular expression of my love and appreciation for them, wow, what a beautiful exchange it becomes. So when we live with this more, well, I'll say maybe you and I live with this more open heart, it's such a vulnerable, kind of scary place, but it's such a beautiful place to live.
Yes.
Because then you start seeing all the different expressions of love, kind of like you were describing all those different colors, sort of like the world was on fire, but in a good way. And it's like being out amongst human beings now, I'm able to hold space for that pain because I know my own, and have deep empathy and compassion, right? But also know that there's tremendous beauty and love there.
Yes.
Maybe not in every single human being, because I know some people, there's studies now that, there are human beings walking on the planet who just the hard wiring went in, and so many traumas that there is no empathy. But for those on the healing path, for those who want to live a fulfilling life, who want to live open-hearted and in contribution and in service of other people, it's so exciting to me that when you realize the experience of loving and being loved is so fulfilling, wow, you just kind of keep keep leaning
Oh,
into
yeah.
it,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. That's true. It feels
Ah,
good. It feels good to love and to be loved in it. And
yes.
if you can alchemize healing through the traumas by loving yourself and loving other people, there's really no greater gift. It really teaches you that, you know, as woo as this might sound, like love is the answer. Love yourself, love other people, and then you can continue to do the work. But it really has to start with you. And then once you heal, even to a degree, even if you're not completely healed, but you're on the healing path, you're on a spiritual journey, you're on an awakening journey, at least now you have some paradigms that have shifted to be able to kind of give you a container to step through with love.
Oh, 100%. Well, and I love learning that, self-love is, like, but it includes self-confidence, self-worth, self-value,
Yes.
self agency. I mean, making a new choice. Like for me, okay, I've discovered I was gluten free, and it's like, okay, I gotta let go of all the wheat and
Yeah.
not even dabble in it.
Yep.
Okay, that's gonna be, and but to be kind and compassionate with myself along the journey. So if I do have a piece of toast, I'm not like beating myself up, but
Right.
going back to go, wait, that didn't feel good in my body. So there's the feedback loop.
Yep.
But that there are many components, because I don't know about you, but there was a point in which I was fiercely aware that I loved myself, but I didn't value myself,
Mm.
and I really didn't feel safe. Well, how do you actually really, really love yourself if you don't feel safe? If I didn't feel safe, right, in this container, right, or out in the world, or value myself, like really, really think that I had something inside that was worthy, or that I was just worthy because I existed. That's still a head scratcher for me, because I think there will always be, okay, you got to perform. There's something, get on the gerbil wheel and, produce something that's valuable.
Yes.
um, but maybe I am valuable just for existing. So
Just by
there's
being.
like this wholeness to that expression of self-love, and it has these different aspects to it. And I love learning about agency, because that's where the rubber meets the road, where you're off the meditation mat, you're coming out a downward dog, and you're taking the next love inspired action for your life and for another human being, because you want to live in a world where, we lift one another up.
That's right. That's right. Leave people better than you found them. This is something that I had an innate knowledge of in my life, but it doesn't mean you meet someone, you leave them. It just means in every interaction, in every conversation, every transferring of energy, just add a little bit of positivity and love, every time that you can. And I think that this is a small way that on a micro level you can really change the world. If everybody had this perception of leaving every interaction better than they found it, it would raise vibration, it would raise love, it would raise happiness and kindness. And so, more power to the people that are doing that. And I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here and go into Feng Shui and how it found you, because I feel like it was probably life-changing, life-altering, healing, interesting. Like, what the hell is this? Like, all that. So just talk.
Right. I know. Oh, well, of course it came by way of a flood.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course it did, Jesse. Yeah, Valentine's night, we have this flood of a finished basement, oh man, and lost a number of things. It's a month later from that, you know, awful, at which we were still kind of like recovering
Yeah,
recovering
yeah.
from. I'm with a family member at the time who just was like, oh my gosh, this book and feng shui. And I'm like, feng shui, chop suey, what is this all about?
Yeah.
She's like, no, 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 it's about your physical space feeling really good, and
Mhm.
your life working. And so she hands me a book. It's the Western School of Feng Shui, Room by Room, by Tara Catherine Collins. Love this book. Love it, love it, love it. it's still a resource in my life. I still, I've got the copy on the shelf here. And
Very cool.
at any rate, I was like, okay. And I opened it and it said, live with belongings that you love.
Mm.
And I just was like, what? It's stuff. But I'm intrigued. And I end up slurping down the entire book. She's like, take it with you. I'll get another copy. And I'm like, thank you. And I walk into my house and I look around and I'm surrounded by hand-me-downs that I loathe.
Mm.
And then that deeper question, was I living now at that juncture? I was not living a life that I loathed, but who was I? Right? Because the degrees, all that, trying to earn people's
performance,
right? Performance,
yes.
Right? It was like somebody else's script. They could just kept handing me, oh, you'd be good at this, Laura. You'd be good at this, and I'm like, okay, yep. Right? And I loved being a full-time parent. I mean, I still love being a mom, although they're grown, they're grown adults now. But I just was like, oh my gosh, who am I? And that deeper aha about my life had me then begin to see that I could take actions to clear the way for living a life true to my heart, my voice, my calling, my passions, the dignity, the confidence, all of those good things, right? It was really life-changing. And so, of course, I began to clear even more things, right? Because we had lost a whole bunch. And I'm like, okay, let's just keep the party going. And my kids were little. And, I've just got beautiful memories of, them beginning to hand me things. And even their dad at the time, my then husband, was like, okay, yeah, you can take this. And he got a little concerned that I was going to take him to donate well and kind of sort of
down the road a little bit.
Yeah, it's like out in the front yard, I mean, that does sometimes happen, but right. Because you get on that transformational journey of recognizing, oh my gosh, wow, I'm here. I'm not a hand-me-down. My life isn't a hand-me-down script of ancestral, walk in line and, march to the orders. It's like, wait, that discovery of, again, kind of looping back to the 14-year-old, why are you here? Yeah. Right? Like, why are you really here? Yeah. So there you go.
So when you were introduced to this, almost like a lifestyle change for you, really, and then a way to maybe be of service to other people, what was it like? Tell us what it actually is for those that don't understand what Feng Shui is. What are you actually implementing? What are you doing? What are you removing? What's the thought process behind it? I have a couple things that come to mind kind of before we jump in there. There's a woman named Marie Kondo. Have you heard her name before?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So Marie Kondo, I was introduced to her through Tim Ferriss's podcast, who's another great podcast host. And he has amazing people that come on and just talk about the most beautiful things. And she's talking about, like, don't have anything that doesn't bring you joy. And this is something that just came out of what you said. It was, if you have, an old, piece of furniture, or if you have something that's just sitting there and it's like, for some reason, it's just not feeling right, or it's dragging you down a little bit, get rid of it. Like, why do you still have it? So, like, things that you should have, and so I've taken on this. There's a book called Essentialism. Have you heard this book before?
I believe I have. Yeah. And I know that there's a documentary called Minimalism. So there's all kinds of things that are flowing out of this. Yeah.
Just whittling down to the things that just really bring you joy. And part of me, and it's in my mind now, so it's going to happen in the future soon, because once I get a thought, like, it usually purveys out into an actual, tangible thing, right? And it's, I guess that's how everybody operates. But for me, it's like, it's like, I've started thinking about just whittling down things that I just don't even use or I don't need. They're just kind of taking up space because there was an accumulation phase, I think, of everyone's life. A lot of times they just keep getting stuff. But up until a few years ago, this is more than a few years now, I started putting my money and time into things, experiences, and people. So I don't need another set of like knives. I don't need another, maybe to upgrade once in a while, but I don't need to just keep consuming. I have all the things and I want to have less. And so can you speak to all that and just kind of your journey with learning it and how you implemented it into in others' lives as you went along?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, just that, and I love what you shared, and I love that you had that experience, because that's a essential part of the feng shui journey, is to absolutely align yourself, because the three basic principles are everything is alive with energy, everything is connected, and everything, and the energy and everything is changing. And so simplifying and organizing, living with comfort and safety, and living with belongings that inspire you and support you is so incredibly important. So those are the three principles, three practices that I educate people about. And their intentions for our spaces. So for instance, the kitchen is really about meal preparation, right? And yet sometimes I'll walk into a home. Well, now I'm working on Zoom with clients also, but wow, they'll have all kinds of what I call wandering nomads there that confuse the intention of that space. So there's guidance about being clear, about having clarity in your life, right? About a place for everything and everything in this place, but also honoring that everybody may have a different organizational style.
Yes.
You could have a mind melder, the person who has to clear off the desk and put it away, and they'll know exactly where things are behind closed doors. But then you have the I spyer who needs to see visually what's out. So they're the person that's getting the glass out of the cabinet, leaving it on the counter, because they know, in about 15 minutes, they want to fill it with lemonade. But then the mind melder comes in and has washed it and stuck it in the
can I just pause you real quick here?
And then they're like, oh my gosh. And so knowing that, and then the hidden treasure seekers are the folks that love going on the hunt, right? They'll love discovering the treasures inside the box that they stashed, in the glove compartment that they stashed, the $20 bill that they tucked in a pocket of their jeans, right? And then they have this moment of, wow, and the truth is we're all three of these.
Yes.
So that's another thing that I educate people about. I think more than anything, it's this sense of alignment, balance, and harmony. Alignment, balance, and harmony, so that you get greater clarity about, back to that question of why you're here,
yep,
what your life energy is for. And like you said, you had that awakening, like maybe it's not about accumulating stuff that I don't need and I don't use and I don't love,
yep,
right? And then you begin to go, wow, my house, and then I've got this cluttered mind and I don't know what to focus on. And it causes the confusion, right? The disorganization, the clutter, it blocks the flow of life energy. Same way with but I encourage people to expand it. And you spoke to this, it's like activities. Our activities that you do on a daily basis, sucking your soul, stop it. Get those out of your calendar. Do you have relationships with people? Again, sucking your soul. And it's like, wow, it's time to go. Thank you for all the lessons, all the wisdom. You don't have to say, F you to that person. You can just, graciously, thank them,
yes,
maybe, and then do a little ghosting thing. Or just generally, if it's that kind of relationship, you could just say, we came to, it was a reason. It was a season. It wasn't a lifetime, but thank you. Thank you for everything, the riches that you brought to my journey, but it's now our departing moment.
yes.
And thank you. So relation, because we're in this interconnected, interdependent, from my way of thinking, and of course from the feng shui way of thinking too, a world, right? And it was founded over 3,000 years ago, right? This ancient wisdom that was about being in harmony with the natural world, Jesse. And okay, we may not need to go there, but we're sort of a little bit out of harmony with our natural world and ourselves. I mean, things have gotten out of balance.
Let me
right.
Real quick.
So it's all of that, and it's a very transformational process for the people who want to take it on. Like, it's way more than just sparking joy. It's a deeply emotional experience, and it can be nuanced and messy, and grief and loss. And sometimes people hold on to things that have a mixed message, and it's okay. Because like, it's like giving permission, right, for all those expressions. And that, it's not bifurcated, is what I'm saying. It's not just you love it, you hate, no, there's some belongings, they're from a loved one who died. And you're like, I see that item and I'm reminded that they're dead, but I also love this person. It's the grief love place.
Yep.
So I would never say get rid of that belonging if it ultimately reminds you of the love. Mm-hmm. Even as it reminds you of the grief and the loss. Because as you go through your bereavement and your grieving process, the love will still be imbued in that physical object, whether it's the hanky of your dad, or the picture that an aunt gifted you, and that you've got framed up on your wall, and you just love it and have loved it your whole life. And to each person their own. And that's where I feel like guiding people to their own inner wisdom. I love asking meaningful questions, much like you are doing, right? Because when you listen and hold space for people, you start to hear what pains them, but also what brings them joy. And then you can kind of get inside that nuance and hold the mirror up and just go, wow, that joy, do you realize how lit up you just were in answering that question? And they're like, oh, wow. So I often am just writing people permission slips, to just that right there, that feeling right there, go with that. That inclination to take the creepy artwork off the wall. Yes, please do that. It's your home. It's not somebody else's home. You're the person living here, right?
I have a thought that it came up for me a couple times in terms of how you were describing the three different types of people when they look at their belongings, like the mind clearer, the I spire, and even speaking in a previous relationship, I was definitely everything gets put in its home. Everything, I remember exactly where it is. I'm very organized. And if something's left out on the countertop, like it would itch, like it would be like, I'd have to scratch that itch. I have to like put it away. And so thinking about from a relationship context, when you have someone who's a mind clearer and you have somebody who's an I spire living together, do you do quasi couples therapy through your Feng Shui?
I kind of do.
And how does this?
I do.
Yeah,
because it really is about honoring the expression of the other individual.
Yes.
And understanding that for them, seeing the objects is a source of inspiration. They're not waking up in the morning intending to agitate you.
No.
Right?
But you may think
as a mind melder, if you happen to be a mind melder, and I'm a mixture actually at this point, but I lean more towards the mind melder.
Yeah.
And with my kids, mom, where's and I'd be like, it's on the third drawer down in the back corner, right? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? And I'm like, mind melder. But so it's about honoring. Well, first of all, understanding these descriptions that people are inspired is kind of like the personality matrix or the Enneagram, right? And understanding the hard wiring, soft wiring of another human being, and honoring that about them, and then finding the sacred places, hopefully having separate places where you can absolutely riff out your I spying, you can riff out your mind melding in these separate rooms, maybe separate offices or a sanctuary room, and have that full expression. But in the shared spaces, really have those conversations where you can honor one another without causing conflict.
Yeah,
right?
It can
and I often get this question, you need to work with my husband because he's a clutter bug. And I'm like, well, start with you.
Yep.
I'm talking to you. So I'll encourage you, become the change that you want to see in your household. And inevitably, when I ask the question, well, do you happen to have any belongings that are yours that you don't love, need, use, they don't inspire you, they're just sitting there staring at you, and they're kind of like, oh yeah. Right. And I'm like, okay, start there, because in your clearing and your greater joy, others around you might go, wow, that's kind of cool that this person is becoming happier and happier. And I would say that it could be part of the not good fit, because clearly if somebody is genuinely kind of on that spectrum of hoarder, and you're way over here, neat person, you may not, that just may not be a good fit. So it could be a question that you ask out on a date.
When you're dating, yeah.
Kind of like, what's your relationship to your physical space and to your belongings, and that kind of thing, so that it becomes a way to sort for that clarity moment. Because do you really want to have conflict around physical belongings and have that distract you from the love? And we're back to the love and all the ways that you could be expressing love for one another.
Yeah. I think there's probably usually a deeper rooted point of conflict. It's not just the messy desk or whatever it is. There's probably something deeper that needs to be paid attention to. So it is a great thing to start off on the right foot and find out maybe someone's modus operandi, like how they operate, and figure out, okay, well, you're going to be okay. And maybe we have our own desks, maybe we have our own floors, whatever it is. We can meet in the middle and be harmonious that way. But it's something I immediately was like calling myself out, because I've done that. Like if someone left a glass on the counter, I'm like putting it right away. I'm like, why couldn't you put that away? I mean, but like now I have words and experience to be able to understand that it's not that someone was just being lazy or didn't give a shit. It was just like, that's who they are. It's like, they need to see the cup, because maybe 15 minutes later, they're going to go get lemonade. So thank you for that free therapy advice. That was beautiful.
You're welcome.
The one thing I want to make sure we cover before we jump off is you are an author now 4 times over. Congratulations. I love it. And as an aspiring author that's about halfway through his first book, I'm excited to hear about this newest book. Can you give us a little insight? Can you talk about it yet? Book number 4?
I don't know if I have permission to talk
about
it.
Like a high level interview, like what the title
I think maybe I can, just say the title. Is Abundant Heart: Thoughts on Healing, Loving, and Living Free. I think that's about all I can say. But I could talk openly and a lot about Live Inspired, which is a series of essays with the wisdom gleaned from these life experiences, kind of like the flood story. The flood story is not in this book. It's in Let Go Courageously, but in Live Inspired, it's really a brave and vulnerable, candid, doing this, right? I'm opening the kimono and, and I had one reviewer say, it's like I kind of, something opened a vein. So that was a little, but I do, I'm very honest about my bumbling and my failings and the learnings along the way, along with that wisdom gleaned and wishes for the reader. And I'm very, very proud of Live Inspired. I love the book. I love the honesty in which I shared my some of my often hilarious stories, and sometimes hearing back from people, they'll let me know they laugh, they cry, they see things about their own lives, and there's so much they can relate to, even if they haven't had a similar experience. There's something very human about Live Inspired, so they can see their own humanity in that book. So.
Beautiful. And in this 4th book that it was kind of hush hush, but you kind of heard it here first, at least in the name of title. When is this book expected to release so that people can get? Is it hard copy? Is it is it audio book like Kindle? Where can they get it when it comes out?
Yeah, so it's going to be released 11/11. 2021, which I know in the world of world, 11/11 is really auspicious.
I see it all the time.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah, right. Me too. And well, it's funny because for years I'll say, I have a dear friend, Teresa, And I always say, thank you, God, angels, and Teresa. I just got them all in the
Yeah,
same.
she's in there.
She was actually born on November. Was she born on November? No. Anyway, never mind. She was born on November. 11 means a lot to her too.
Yes, yes.
Importantly, but yeah, I believe it'll be coming out as an ebook and a soft cover through Sacred Stories Publishing. I believe I can give that information.
Beautiful.
So
looking forward to. And is there a time frame on when you expect the book to be released?
It'll launch on the 11th, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
To stay tuned.
Yeah, we will. And we're looking forward to it. And as soon as we can talk about it, we'll make sure we do for you. But we just want to be the first person to say thank you so much for being who you are. Thank you for your story, your journey. Thank you for your courageous vulnerability. I'm excited to walk through life with you and see where our journey takes us. But you are the amazing, the mighty, powerful Laura Staley. I'm Jesse T. Catch us next week on next week's episode of the Jesse T Show.